Hello everyone and welcome. This is what we'll be making today. This is obviously one half of the project. It's one earring. What we've done is we've made a fairly sturdy base out of some 20 gauge wire. We've put some 2mm beads around the edge, and then we've used some 28 gauge wire to make this sort of web effect. So what we're going to need is some 20 gauge wire. You'll end up using about 25 centimeters or 10 inches of that. We'll need some 28 gauge wire. We need a fair bit of that, so 1 to 2 meters or 40 to 60 inches of your 28 gauge wire. We'll need some beads. We really want 2mm beads. We want small beads for this particular project. And we'll need an earring hook. In terms of tools, all you need are your round nose pliers and your wire cutters. So let's get started, and what we're going to start by doing is making our base shape. So I'm going to just try and straighten that out a bit with my fingers before we get started. So we're going to find a sort of central spot. Sort of bend it up just like that, so that we can make this sort of oval shape, sort of a bit more of a diamond shape really. All I'm going to do is use the first one I did freehand, so all I'm going to do is use that one to shape up this one against. So if we can stop, you can just use your fingers to sort of mold it in place to get it a bit rounded, similar to when we make a sort of leaf shape. Okay, so that's looking good about there. So what I'm going to do is bend one of my wires down to make a loop. So I'm just going to put my pliers a bit further up from where we want it to finish. Just bend that down. But we don't want it to interfere with that one, so we'll just move that around there. So you can see we've just got a loop at the top now. Just shape that so that it's sticking upright. And then we'll use the other side of our wire to wrap the top part and close off on our shape. So I'm just going to squeeze these two sections of wire together, and we'll hold that in place with our pliers. It can always be a bit tricky bending with 20 gauge wire, but once you get it going it works pretty well. Alright, so I've bent that round twice around the top, and we can keep moulding our shape with our fingers as we go along. So now that we've got that, I'm just going to trim these ends of the 20 gauge wire. You can see we could probably have done with a little bit less wire than that, an inch or so less. So just trim that to make sure that you've got it flush to your structure and you don't end up with any bits sticking out. So you can do as much as you can with your wire cutters, and then you really need to use your pliers to make sure everything is sitting down well. Okay, we'll fix that up. Sometimes it's easier to sort of bend it up in a different angle so you can get a good grip on it. Okay, there we go. Trim a little bit more off this one here. Okay, now what we're going to start doing is fixing our 2mm beads to our wire structure. So we're going to use about 40 beads in total, so 20 on each earring. What I'm going to do is just grab a little selection there and grab some of our 28 gauge wire. I generally don't cut off large sections of 28 gauge wire to start with, because it can get a little bit fiddly to deal with and it ends up being very time consuming. So I think it's much better to work in sections, and it's very easy to attach an additional section to your structure once you've got it going. So we'll just cut a section of our 28 gauge wire. Okay, and we're going to start by affixing our 28 gauge wire to our structure. So I'm going to start at the top, right near the looped part of the structure, and I'm just going to bend the wire around that 3 times. Okay. So now we can see that our 28 gauge wire is firmly attached. And the next step is to grab one of our 2mm beads. So we just thread one of our 2mm beads onto our 28 gauge wire. Okay, so then what we do is we want our bead to be really sitting upright on our structure. So what I'm going to do is hold it on top of the wire with my fingers, and I'm going to wrap the 28 gauge wire twice around our frame so that it's sitting on top of the wire. Now what I like to do is a little bit of a bezel sort of effect, and you can see that these have sort of got some wire wrapped around the base of them. You can keep just going like that, but I think for a really nice effect, wrap the 28 gauge wire around the 2mm bead a couple of times. Then when we get to, so if you do that round twice, and then when you get down to the middle structure, you wrap it around your base twice. So that's going to hold our bead really firmly in place and give it that bezel effect. So we'll keep going by stringing more beads onto our wire structure, and sometimes you find that this tends to twist around a bit. You just need to keep putting it back in place with your fingers whenever you see it doing something it shouldn't be. So we want to make our beads fairly close together. So again, we just wrap our wire around twice and then twice around the structure until we get to another bead. Again, you just hold it on top of the wire structure, wrap it around your base wire a couple of times. Make sure it's all sturdy and being held in place, and then wrap it around the bottom part of the bead twice. Makes a really nice effect. It's a really good idea to do that with rings. Makes it look like your ring has something of a bezel setting, so it's a very versatile technique to use. So holding it on top, wrapping the wire around twice, and then wrapping it around the bottom of the bead. Okay, and then we fix it to the structure. Now if we run out of wire, which we inevitably will, all we need to do is fix the wire to the structure, again a new section of wire, by wrapping it around the base structure twice, and we can then keep going. So what I'll do, I'll keep going with this until we run out of wire, and then we'll come back and see how to reattach it. Okay, so we've run out of wire pretty quick on that one. So you can see we've got a little bit there, but it's really not enough to do another one with. So all I'm going to do is trim that bit off. Make sure you use your pliers just to mould it down towards your frame so there's no sharp bits of wire sticking it up. And then all we do is grab another section of wire and attach it to the frame the same way that we did with the first lot. So I'm just going to wrap this one around twice. Push that wire up towards that bead. This is the great thing about working with 20 gauge wire. Very easy to work with. So and then all we're going to do is There's a little bit of a sharp edge on that one. We're just going to keep going, attaching our beads to our structure. But you just need to make sure when you've started a new section that you push it right up towards the last beaded section so that you don't end up with any gaps. This piece of wire was probably a little bit too big to work with on the benefit of hindsight. So again, we just want to hold our bead towards our structure, wrap it around the wireframe twice. Just need to keep pushing that section down towards the other section so that we don't have a gap. We'll trim that section of wire in a moment so it stops getting in the way. And then we just use our 28 gauge wire again to go around our beaded section a couple of times. Okay. Just keep pushing it up towards the other bead and just trim the excess wire from there. And I'll keep going with that. And what I'll keep doing is I'll keep going until we've covered the whole frame, and then we'll be back. Okay, and we're back. So you can see I've done the beads all around the base structure now. So what we're going to do is start by doing our sort of web effect. And what I've done is I've cut another section of a 28 gauge wire. And we're going to fix this, but probably about a third of the way down the wire. All we're going to do is bend it round once. And the reason we do that is because we don't want any particularly large sections of wrapped wire between these bits. So we'll just do that round once, and then it's really quite a random style that we do. So I might bring that one round there, for instance. And every time we join it to our base structure, we just wrap it around the wire once. And what you'll find is that half the time they're going over the top, these sections of wire, and half the time they're going under the bottom. So it creates almost like a bit of a 3D effect. So I'm not doing this in any particular order. One thing you do want to make sure you do is that you're constantly straightening out your 28 gauge wire so that you don't get any kinks in your crossover sections. You want these sections to be fairly tight. So we'll wrap between these two beads now. So just again, we're just wrapping it around once. And we'll select another section to go to. Again, we're not doing any particular order at all here, just completely random. I'm not counting the number of times that I'm making sections or anything like that. It's really until we're happy with the work that we've done. So I might start on my other section now, so I might go across to here. See, I've got a little bit of a kink there, so I just want to use my fingers just to straighten that out just by pulling on that wire. So I might go down here next. I'm just using both sections of the wire now, and I'm just putting it where there's a bit of a gap. It looks like it might need a section put through it, so I'll go this way. Actually, we'll go down here, I think. One of the ways we can make sure we don't get kinks in is by just making sure it doesn't bend too much when we're wrapping around our different sections. Might trim this section here because I don't think we're going to need that extra bit of wire, and it's just getting in the way. Okay, so we'll find another place that we want to go. I think we'll go in between these two. You'll find it'll start getting a bit more fiddly when you start filling up your sections with wire. So just keep constantly straightening out our 28 gauge wire so we don't end up with kinks in it. Just go around a few more times. We do want it to be sort of roughly comparable to the other one we've done, in the sense that we don't necessarily want the exact same cross-hatching pattern, but we don't want it to look any more full than what we did on the other one. So we might do one more across here, I think, and then we will call it a day. So one here. Yep. Make sure we don't end up getting wrapped around any of our other sections. Let's do one more, I think. It's really just a matter of sort of measuring it up on where you think it should go. I'll try and work that kink out by moving it around my fingers. I think we'll just do one more at the top. Okay, so when we're finished, all we want to do is wrap our wire around twice just to make sure it's fixed there. We don't want to wrap it too many times, because otherwise we'll end up with a sort of obvious connection. Okay, so if we have a look, we're not completely the same, which is good. That's not what we were going for, but we've got sort of roughly comparable number of... I might do one more actually. It's very easy to keep going with this and going and going and going. Okay. So this will really actually be the last one this time. Getting a bit carried away. So all I'm going to do is wrap it round my base structure twice. And I'm going to trim the end of that wire before I keep going. Just down a little bit, just with my pliers. Okay, so if you see any sort of bits of wire that are sticking up or anything like that, just give them a little bit of a trim with your pliers. And just make sure all of our beads are standing upright. So we'll just grab one of our earring hooks, and then all we need to do is slide it on using our looped section and close it off just like that. Okay, and there we have our beaded earrings. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, everyone. Goodbye.